Dale.
Start with the senator.
Dale Cox is the president of the AFL-CIO. He is a operating engineer. You keep that, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're president, and really is a kind of take charge kind of leader who gets things done. It's been a pleasure working with him. So using that as a template, where have we been, where are we now, and where are we going now?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've worked union all my life, which is an odd thing in the state of Utah. I started out as an iron worker when I got out of high school. Then I went to work in the mines up in Wyoming, was a steel worker, became an operating engineer, went to work. I was a 31-year, well, I am a 31 member of the operating engineers. And then was fortunate enough to be Jim Judd's vice president. And when he passed away, I became president. The best way to describe labor is, and I think Peter Cook said it best when he was running for governor. I took him on a round of meetings with me with the operating engineers. We have what we call town hall meetings, and we went to Ogden, we went to Price, and went to St. George for the members that are in the outlying areas that don't get to come to district meetings. And the business manager was there, and they talked about our pension, talked about our health care, and you know, there's been some hard times in the financial market, but our pensions are still solid, our health care is solid. And it finally clicked with Peter. He said, I get it. He said, I've always known I was with labor. I understand why. We're a business. Our business, though, is taking care of the middle class. We have our own health care. We cost the state or the feds absolutely nothing. We have our own training program. We have our own pensions. We have our own retiree health and welfare. Everything everybody wants and everybody is trying to get, we already have, and we're struggling to keep it. And I don't understand. I do understand why the Koch brothers are after us. I understand why the far right are after us, because we're the last representative of the middle class. I mean, we represent 6% of the population of the state of Utah. 6%. And our governor continues to slam unions. I don't, you know, and what does he have to slam? We train, we're the safest workforce available. We continually train our men and women. We continually fund our own health care. We don't take any state money. We don't, so you understand, it's, you know, it's not the union's plan, it's not the union's health care plan, it's not the union's pension plan. They're trust funds. Equal numbers of signatory employers and union representatives sit on these trust funds, and they have the fiduciary responsibility to keep them solvent. So we're an organization that takes care of each other, from the young apprentice, which Danny is. I had to throw that in. He's a laborer, and I'm always trying to get him to become an operator. To the 80-year-old retiree. If you stick with your craft, you will be taken care of with everything from training, representation on the job, increases in pay, pensions, insurance, and everything in between to upgrade your craft. So maybe that's the danger of organized labor. We've always been under fire. Every day I've been a union member, people look at me kind of crossways, and I'm proud of the fact that I am. My dad never had the opportunity to work for a union or be a union member, but he's always proud of me because I was. And I just happened to fall into it. I didn't know anything about it until I went to work as an iron worker. One of my funniest stories, Mike McDonald still is the business manager for the iron workers. And as a young man, I was an iron worker, and then I worked in the mines, and when I came back, I became an operating engineer. And I was in the field for about 20 years, and then I went into the office, went on staff, and my first building trades meeting, Mike just kept looking down the table at me, and I knew he figured I was familiar, but he couldn't quite place who I was, because he hadn't seen me for 20 years. I've been in the field. At the end of the meeting, and the room's it's like this, it's full of business managers, and he looked at me and he said, "Didn't you used to be an iron worker?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Now you're an operating engineer?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What happened?" And he was kind of snobby. I said, "Well, Mike, not everybody can be an operator. Some people just have to stay iron workers." Boy, he hasn't forgiven me yet. But in a nutshell, it's always been a struggle. And it's been a struggle to represent. It's been a struggle to move forward, not with our contractors, because our contractors, for the most part, realize the value, and we have a good relationship. We don't go out on strike. I mean, the last thing in the news was the hostess deal, and everybody's all, look at what the unions did to hostess. Unions didn't do that to hostess. Management did that to hostess. Unions took concession after concession after concession, and it got to where there was nothing left to give. It was it was Romneyized. They wanted to bankrupt it, break it up, and sell it and move on. It had nothing to do with the unions. But yet that's what the press gets all the time. But think back. When was the last strike? We worked through things. I was a district representative over the state of Utah for 6 years with the operating engineers, filed one grievance. And that's because the superintendent, after we tried to settle it, says, "Well, if you don't like it, go ahead and file." Well, what are you going to do? And of course we beat him. And it cost them several $1,000s. But when it went to the next step, I told him, I said, he told us no and to file a grievance. We were under time limit. And so our member was represented, and away we went. And the grievances don't happen. The solutions happen. That's what unions do. Unions and companies work together for solutions. That's why with our highly skilled men and women, our apprenticeship programs, not only our apprenticeship programs, but they're journeyman upgrade as well. So if you're laid off, you go out to the apprenticeship site, out to the training site, and you increase your skills so you're more valuable to that employer when you go back to work. But the future, if anybody got to see the movie The Koch brothers, it'll just scare you to death. And they're aimed all right at us. They're aimed at public employees, but private is no different. The right to collective bargain. There's a collective bargaining bill just under the radar here right now. Every year there has been, but we've been able, with coalitions that we put together with public employees and our private sector and our building trade unions and the friends we have up here on the Hill, we've been able to, for the most part, keep those down. And I think with this, so far, with this session, I think we have a more moderate, we got rid of some of the wingnuts. They got so full of themselves, they ran for Congress and governor and Senate and everything else and lost there as well. So there's still some good things and some bad things happening. And it's not, they are successful and get rid of unions, there'll be a two-class system. It'll be the 2% and there'll be the 98%, and that's all there'll be, because there'll be nobody monitoring the wage. There'll be nobody monitoring the safety and health. There'll be nobody monitoring the health care. There'll be no organization left. And that's what people don't realize, is because even my son, and he's grown up with it, but he's used to having what he has. He doesn't know what it takes to hold on to it. And I talk to him about, we sit down sometimes and talk about what I do. And I say, you know what? I've got mine. I've got my pension. I've got my insurance. And, if I live 100 years, I'm going to be taken care of. But what I'm worried about is you. What's going to be left for our kids and our grandkids if we don't stand up now? And that's what labor does. We stand up every day. We're not perfect. We have some of our own wingnuts, and sometimes I'm one of them. But what we do is genuine. And the men and women I work with in the labor movement, I've never been prouder to be with a group of people, because it doesn't matter what race you are, what sex you are, what sexual orientation you are, anything. If you have the skill to run that dozer or pull that wire or teach that child, we're going to take care of you, and you're going to get the pay and you're going to get the benefits just like everybody else. I can't say, I mean, we've got some, I'd like to say there's no discrimination in unions, but we've got some old school people, we've got some young people, and the cultures are clashing. But I guarantee even the old school people, if push comes to shove, will get behind that man or woman that's having a problem, and we find a solution to the problem. And we do it when it's like this, not when it's like this. And with that, Senator Mayne, if you'd like to speak, or we can.
So let me ask you a question before I send it to the good senator. It's been a bit disheartening, maybe because we don't know exactly what's going on other than this giant trend of ugliness. Can you talk a bit about what happened in Wisconsin and what happened in Michigan and what that is leading to, and does that relate to us?
It does relate to us, only we already have all that. This is a right to work state. Do you guys know what right to work means? It sounds great. Everybody wants a right to work. It sounds great, but what it means is you have a right to work under a union agreement, under a union negotiated agreement, and not belong to the union. So you don't have to join the union, you don't have to pay dues, but you get the pension, you get the wage, you get the insurance, you get the protection of the contract without paying for it. You get a right, you actually get a right to freeload. And that's what it is, a right to freeload. And over my years, I've had a lot of them, but some men and women actually have a reason, a misunderstanding, or they really were screwed by the union, and by God, they're not going to join. And when they have that, I work with them, but what kills me is the man or the woman that'll look you straight in the eye and say, why should I join your union and pay dues? I get it all for free. Well, that's the type of mentality that will be the end of us if it continues on. In Wisconsin, they went after collective bargaining, and they went after, I don't know if they got right, I don't think they got right to work. In Minnesota, they passed the right to work law in a lame duck session because the Democrats were going to take control. So the period between November 2nd and when they were out of office, January, they got together and it's an attack on the unions, it's an attack on the middle class. Because a rising tide raises all ships. And the only organizations that are out there negotiating for working conditions and pay are organized labor. And if W.W. Clyde gets a $1 increase because of a negotiated agreement, then Harper Construction is going to have to give their men and women, their good ones at least, an increase, or they're going to lose them to W.W. Clyde. So, and the same goes for any other organization. So if that goes away, there will be no incentive. I testified in front of the Immigration Commission in September, and it was very frustrating to see what they were trying to do. Unions and organized labor, I want to make it very, very plain. We do not discriminate. What we're trying to do is stop the indentured servitude of these men and women, these immigrants that they're bringing in. It doesn't matter to me if they're legal or illegal, that's somebody else's problem. But if they're being treated, and they are being treated like indentured servants, some of these men and women are getting paid next to nothing, and they're working hours in unsafe conditions. And not only are they not being paid, but they're driving down the compensation package for legitimate contractors that cannot compete in the construction market because these non-scrupulous contractors are taking advantage of these immigrants. When I testified before the commission, they asked me, well, these are jobs that Utahns don't want to do anyway. And I said, that's not the fact. These are jobs that Utahns cannot afford to do and support their families at the compensation that is being offered. Jobs that used to pay $15, $20 an hour plus benefits are now paying 8 or 10 or less, and they're trying to open up the floodgates and bring these people up. And these men and women, this is more money than they've ever made because they come from a bad situation. But if they're going to come here and they're going to work, they ought to be treated like the rest of us. Not drive the wage down, but they ought to be paid just like I would if I was hanging sheetrock or painting, just like anybody else in this room is. And that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for justice for not only them, but us. I get so irritated with this. There was a fruit farmer that had some H-2Bs, no H-2B, whatever the agriculture was, the federal program for agriculture, and he testified and he was complaining that he can't get the men and women, the kids up the street to come and pick his fruit. And, he offers them 8 or 10, or no, yeah, $5 or $6 an hour, whatever it was. Well, I went out in the hall and he was talking to a friend of mine, and so I joined that conversation. He says, by the time I do all the paperwork and I bring these migrant workers up here, I'm paying them $15 to $18 an hour. And I'm like, I bet you if you went down the street and offered that kid or that man or that woman that isn't working $15 to $18 an hour to pick your fruit, they'd line up. But he isn't. He's offering them $5 or $6 and then complaining. So that's kind of what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's a push state by state because we were fortunate enough to have Obama win, thank God, because if Romney had been in, we've all been gone by now. We really would have. Prevailing wage, or after prevailing wage, we don't have a prevailing wage in the state of Utah. We have a federal, but not a state. That hurts us worse than really right to work, because peer pressure from the men and women on the job can help you with the right to work that guy or that gal that doesn't want to join your union. When the guy next to him knows isn't a member, because they won't let him know they're not a member. Oh yeah. So you kind of let everybody know who is and who isn't. Then when he comes to borrow a tool, then it's like, my union, the wages my union negotiated for me, bought these tools. You don't pay dues. You go get your own shit. So that isn't as big a deal as prevailing wage, where contractors play on a level playing field. We're men and women, and at the end of the line, that's what it is. It's the men and women that are doing the job, that are on the front lines, that are being exploited, and that's our job, is to make that as safe and as profitable as we possibly can for the men and women that are out there building the roads, building the buildings, teaching our kids, the policemen and women that are protecting our lives, the firemen that are protecting our lives. That's what we do, is try to make that as palatable as we can and move forward as a group. And we've got a good organization up here. Jim Jett put together a good organization, and we're moving forward with that. We're even with education, police, public employees, we all meet on Thursdays, go over the bills that affect us and where we're at, and use our combined strengths instead of one group going this way, one group going that way. If we come together and move forward, we've been a lot more successful.
All right, Dale. We'll have questions when we hear from Karen. And welcome to all of our people who are at home. Lazy people that ought to be driving here with the rest of us. There's more than 14,000 people here in the arena, and we don't know why you guys can't get out of bed like the rest of us, but nonetheless, we'll let it go. We're happy to have you. So the first time I met Dale, I was running for the state party chair. Frankly, he invited me over to the operating engineer's office, and there was 6 or 7 guys that he had specifically dressed in hard hats. They brought me in a room, put me down, put a light over my head.
100-watt light bulb.
And they said, asked me some questions, and then I don't know whether I answered them right or wrong, and Dale reached in his pocket and he said, "How much are you making a year?" And I said, "I'm making $1 a year. Is this part each year?" So took $3 out and said, "There, we paid for you for 3 years." So he reminds me occasionally that, who pays my salary? So I remember.
That came out of Tracy's college fund, too.
I got to tell you, I sit, kind of a bit kitty corner from Senator Mayne, and in a body full of people that are bright and interesting and refreshing over what I thought they would be. There's one person who stands above the rest. Senator Mayne, the prism that everything goes through her head, you can almost watch it, is how is this going to affect the working men and women in this state? There's a lot of people represented on that floor, but most of them are the same. Karen stands up, she looks at every bill, she gets it done, sometimes quietly, behind the scenes, she's working, she's incredibly effective in helping the other senators who really don't get it a lot of times and what it's like to be a working person in the state. And sometimes the issues are mind-bogglingly complicated because employers have armies of lawyers all of that and goes to the heart of it. And I watched her, and then she gets those issues segregated out, and then she gets the laws written, and then whatever it takes, senator to senator and representative to representative, she gets the job done. It's a pleasure to have Senator Mayne here today.
Thank you very much. I yield to my president, and so that's why I let him go first. This, senators come and go, but presidents will be there forever. I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much. Dale spoke about a lot of the construction trades, and I deal with them a lot. But my heart comes from what I do. And if you watch the legislation I pass, it has to do a lot with safety, has a lot to do with workers, but it has a lot to do with good companies that take care of business. It really doesn't have, because the union brothers and sisters, they have companies that take care of them. They sit apart. Where I go, those that don't have a voice, because I know what hurts them. I always go back to, in my memory, that drives me is when my late husband worked at Kennecott, and he was president of a local of about 3,000 members, and he was 26 years old. And very young men, and they would go over the berm in their trucks. And we'd talk about that, go to the funerals, and this was a young fellow going to young families and consoling them. So that's where my journey went to safety, because I have seen it and all the things that organized labor and good companies, wherever they are, try to put in place so people are protected. So that's where the journey started for me. And many of my pieces of legislation, like I say, have to do with safety, have to deal with protecting, like I say, the good companies. Those good companies need to be protected, union or non-union, because they're taking care of business. So Dale spoke about the construction trades, but I want to shift gears a little bit and go to those that are not in the construction trades. I'm AFT, which is American Federation of Teachers. there's many locals, the pilots, there's many locals that are smaller, the nurses, all kinds of occupations want to be organized. So they fall under the umbrella of the AFL-CIO. And the postal workers, that's a journey that's going to be taken for them. All those occupations that are being cut back or diminished, that's always an issue for unemployed workers. I think the AFL-CIO has been in the forefront, so protecting those people that lose their jobs, because we take care of everyone, they're organized or unorganized, and I think my legislation proves that. This year, I've done a lot with safety, and you're going to see a lot of that, my legislation. Yesterday, another person hit another track's car because they don't take care of business. And I have several pieces of legislation this year on safety. And with mass transit, we have to live with mass transit. It doesn't have to live with us, because we're gonna always lose. So our culture needs to be, we all wanna live in one place. So we have to watch out for each other. So I'm gonna sponsor a safety week, the end of June, with Workers' Comp, Union Pacific, the Rio Grande, all those transit entities. We're coming together to have a safety week. We're gonna have parades, we're gonna give out awards for safety on the job to promote that culture, because it saves a lot of money and a lot of heartache if we don't run into things and if we take care of business. So that's a goal this year, and it's always been, I spoke to you of where my heart comes for safety all those years ago. And so I promote that, and I'm supported by all the big companies in the organizations, AGC, ABC, all those organizations that work together to have safety on the job site, safety when we're going there, and safety when we're around about. So that's where my legislation this year is going, and I hope you all support it, because it's all good. I'll take any questions or anything you want to know about me. You know everything about me. That's good or that's bad. So, like I say, I'm delighted to be a senator. When my late husband was a senator, we did it together. He always told me, he says, "You're a better politician than I am," and I really am. He was a little kinder and gentler than I am. So, but the goal's always the same. The goal is to take care of people, take care of working conditions, to make sure that everybody can make a decent wage and they're respected and have dignity on the job. And that's the goal. It doesn't matter who you work for, where you come from. Everybody deserves a chance, and everybody deserves dignity. Sometimes I have a hard time with the high. Only 25 to 30% of all occupations need a 4-year degree. 70 to 75% all need high-skilled occupations and training. The lady that gives your female friends mammograms, she's high-skilled. People that take your blood, they're high-skilled. Electricians are high-skilled. This is where the majority of jobs are. High-skilled technical people that take care of us, to make things function. So it's always a struggle to make some of my colleagues understand money needs to be shared. Apprenticeship programs need to be nurtured. Those certificates that people get to advance in their occupations need to be nurtured. We need to put money in those schools that perform those duties for us. We have the Solid Community College, we have UCAT, we have Applied Technology. These are packed. These people make a lot of money. I have a group called Women in the Trades. that I was delighted with my good friend Judy. We went up to she's assistant to the president of the AFL-CIO, and she and I went to Washington, and we brought down a program. It's called Women in the Trades. And we go everywhere anybody will take us or listen to us. And these are women that are, one's a trooper, one's an electrician, one's a bulldozer operator. These are women that are that do the same job as a man, makes exactly what a man makes. And it's called Women in the Trades. I brought them to the Senate. And this is my vision, is that women, when they go into occupations, choose one that fits them, that they can take care of their families. You don't have to be a secretary, you don't have to be a teacher, you don't have to be a nurse. We can be anything we choose to be. We can compete in any skill that a man does. And you will make exactly what a man makes. If you go into a skill, you will make exactly what everybody, if you're skilled and licensed and can do the job, you'll make exactly what they make. And this is what happens with women. Money is a big deal to us. We are needy if we don't make enough money. It's very difficult because we usually have the children and those kind of loving liabilities, and liabilities not the way, assets.
Excuse me, Senator, are you saying women senators make the same as men senators?
Yes, well, I probably make more than you.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm in leadership. And so that's with women in the trades, going back to that, this is something that we take everywhere. We go to community colleges, we go to women's group, just giving women, you can do anything. Look at a skill that you're going to be paid well. Look at a skill that you can take care of your families, because like I say, that's the great denominator with us, is money. Financially, if women can't take care of themselves, sometimes they make bad mistakes. So that's where my journey is. My journey is to make sure that my legislation is appropriate for all. When I have a piece of legislation, I work it with my senators, my representatives, so they understand it. It doesn't come from one area. It doesn't come with one arrow. It comes that it encompasses everyone. So that's it, if you don't want to.
So what are your bills specifically, and what are the details of those? Do they have numbers on them yet?
Yeah. They're moving. I have an injured worker bill, and that's moving. That's been worked on 2 years. I have one that we're working, that is over in the House, and it deals with worker owner, where the model of worker owner. That's an interesting one that I fought 2 years ago, and it's a partner to the S35 that was 2 years ago. So those two pieces of legislation, they've been worked on a lot. They have a lot of support, and so you can be watching those. Like I say, I have several safety bills that the companies are all going to join in this year to really have a big push to be safe on the job and be safe when we're driving around mass transit. So we're going to see several of those, and hopefully they have a lot of support, and they've been worked on a lot. So I hope all of these will pass, and they'll see the bounty of good legislation and safe legislation.
So thank you to our labor folks. It's a pleasure. We will jump into a whole bunch of the other bills for the next 15 minutes. We'd love to have you stay if you gotta go, Senator.
I'm on my way. Thank you very much for letting me be with you today. I feel loved here. So that's always love.
So we're just going to go over some of the other bills that are around, and I want to particularly talk to Representative King because he he was appropriately called out of order in a committee hearing where he tried to attack the Attorney General. I happened to be there. It was awkward for me.
What scumbag would try and attack the Attorney General?
There you were going after them. If you feel like talking a little bit about that and some of your other bills, Brian, some of the other things we can talk about, Patrice's smoking bill. And I read this 3 or 4 times, and I think it says children must smoke in a car, but we can think what that is. Senator Dayton has another abortion thing up that we voted on yesterday. The IB bill is fun just to talk about because it was so much fun. Statewide non-discrimination, we finished our final negotiations Monday during the holiday. I can tell you about that. Brian's ethics bills, the Greater Canyonland, where that's going, and this decision that the governor is making now. The federal government is about to give us $440 million a year for the next 10 years. And the governor can't make up his mind whether or not he wants to take the money. Because A, we're going to have to put some more in. So what that means is, and I'm not the world's best business guy, but if somebody comes up to you and says, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to give you $4.1 billion over 10 years. You got to give me back $283 million. I'm thinking, should I do it or shouldn't I?
Don't do it, Jim.
As your lawyer.
Stand up, Prince. Stand up.
I mean, this truly, you in life you have to get into the head of the person that's on the other side of the table so you understand what's going on. This one, I don't even get it, This is money that is coming to Utah, paid by Utah taxpayers. It goes to Washington, and then Washington gives it back to the states. Now, if we don't take it, that cute Jan Brewer, the governor of Arizona, she can't wait to take our $430 million and give it to the poor people that really need the help in Arizona. But we would have a great moment where we could stand up, wave a fist at the federal government and say, we don't want your lousy $430 million this year. We don't want almost 6,000 jobs in the medical industry per year for the next 10 years. We don't want any of this because we're ideological, and it says Obamacare on it. You guys keep it. That'll teach you in Washington. So that's Medicare, but any comment? Get us up to date on what's catching your notion, and we can take the next 15 minutes and just have a discussion about the bills and the session in general.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'm sort of focused on right now is we've got coming before us in the Judiciary Committee this afternoon gun bills. One of them is the constitutional carry gun bill from Representative Mathis that basically says we want to make it so that anybody who wants to carry a gun wherever they want to carry a gun. And I'm concerned about that because right now you have certain barriers that exist to people getting concealed weapon permits. And you just open the floor up to anybody over 21 who I can't remember exactly what the limits are, but they're less stringent than the limits that currently exist for people getting concealed weapon permits. So that's a big issue. And then we've got the other bill from Representative Green that says that if a federal officer comes to Utah to enforce more restrictive than currently exist gun laws, and that's passed, they'll be arrested, and they'll be detained, and we will prevent them. So that one, the second one is one.
I think Brigham Young did that.
Yeah, see how well it worked out. Johnston's Army. So what we'll have there, that one is. The second one carries a constitutional note from our Office of General Counsel, Legislative General Counsel, that says this really doesn't even get close to being constitutional. But I have gotten, Representative Eric and I are on the Judiciary Committee, and over the last 4 or 5 days, we've gotten over 1,000 emails. Almost all of them. Almost, I can count on 2 or 3 hands. Where is my third hand? I can count on 2 hands and a foot the number of emails that I've gotten that are asking me to vote against those bills. The vast majority are kind of cookie cutter form emails saying, you gotta vote for these bills. I'm not voting for these bills, but
Thank you.
But I'll tell you, we need to do a better job of responding to this drumbeat, this incessant volume of emails from folks who believe, they honestly believe that more guns in our society and more guns in the hands of more people will make us safer. James?
Senator Dabakis is working on this non-discrimination in the state of Utah. Over time has progressed into an economic argument to attract creative and high-paying jobs in the state of Utah. The objection of many of the folks who would not bring those jobs here was that basically a bunch of whack jobs, and that
Homophobes.
and that there was no good reason to come here because it was not an inviting environment. Have we tried, at least with chambers of commerce and folks of that nature, where these gun bills are concerned, to say, look, we're spending all this time and energy negotiating a very delicate compromise on this, and at the same time, in some left field, or excuse me, far right field environment, you're completely counteracting that. It seems to me that the economic conservatives in the Senate and the House ought to be getting this notion, unless of course they're just afraid of being removed at a convention or precinct caucus meetings. But this seems completely counterintuitive to the investment that your folks are making, and it's a hell of a leap of faith that they're making. So I'm just wondering if that argument has been made and whether you can bring that to bear, because I mean, we can ill afford to be seen yet again to be that reckless and that dogmatic and that irresponsible.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, you've got, that argument is being made to a greater degree with public education, of course. It's being made to a greater degree with some effect on clean air. It's being made to a greater degree with some effect on the anti-discrimination stuff, on homophobia stuff. I haven't heard it nearly as much on the gun stuff yet, Jim, but I think it's a great idea to start talking about the business community, about whether they really want a return to the Wild Wild West. Because that's what they're talking about, constitutional carry. They're talking about anybody walking anywhere with a pistol or a rifle strapped to their
Looking back to 1999 and the shooting of Chiat Center, and then which followed closely on the LDS Church's statement about guns in churches and schools, and the defiance of the then fairly moderate, compared to what they are now, Republican Party saying, no, we really do insist on having guns. But KSL and some of those folks at that time certainly were not in favor of expanding rights of people to carry guns into their facility. And I would guess that Adobe and eBay and all those places, that they have individual policies that discourage the carrying of concealed weapons or weapons in general.
No, I think it's a great idea. But I'll tell you what makes a difference in clean air and what makes a difference in education is to have the chamber, to have the Economic Development Council of Utah, to have Spence Eccles at GoEd come in and say, we need to do something. That's when the conservatives stop talking and start saying.
I mean, why not attach a fiscal note?
Well, I have an idea about this. Those of you that are new, like I am, to the process, you can dream up any bill you want, but it goes over to legislative analysts, and then they come back with you and say, this is going to cost this much, and they do their best guess. So the best plans, come back with an $84 billion price tag, and suddenly the idea goes down the tubes. That fiscal note matters. It doesn't exclude anything. It's just a note to the legislature that, by the way, as you think about this, so I have an idea that would cover the broad swath of where we're going, called the weirdness factor. So every bill,
Come on after the Dabakis
every bill would have to get a ledge analyst's weirdness, and it would be on a scale from 1 to 5. So, for example, when a rule or a law comes and it says, okay, you cannot have, you have to order your drinks, you have to order food before you order the drinks. Now, it sounds perfectly logical to people that don't drink. Why not? But for people that drink, it's weird. So we would have a weirdness factor with DABC that would go, look, legislature, you can pass this regulation or rule, but on the weirdness factor, you're going to be somewhere up around 4.5 to 5 because it's going to make us look weird. It's like saying you have to put on your plate the ketchup before the French fries are allowed to come. You know, there's a way that kind of society does it, and this is wrong. So on guns, somebody could introduce that, but allowing anybody to carry any gun, anytime, anywhere, would be a 4.5 on the weirdness factor. And legislators do as you like, but we need to take this into consideration because the higher we are in the weirdness factor, the more likely we are to make national headlines, and the impact of that on our economic future is tremendous. So, Senator, you can introduce your bill. You got to live with the fiscal responsibility that comes with that. And you also need to live, and everybody needs to know what the weirdness factor is. This IB thing which came up this week. Do you guys know what IB is? It's the International Baccalaureate. It's kind of like AP classes but on steroids. This is where our kind of smart kids have in 8 schools in Utah, and it's expanding this incredibly challenging thing. But frankly, the program is headquartered out of Geneva, Switzerland. Need I say more?
You need not say more to me.
It's out of Geneva, Switzerland, and it is an attempt, clearly, by those United Nations and Swiss people to affect our morality in the state of Utah. Going around the back way, yeah, but there it is.
That's what we need to do.
Yeah. So we had this huge debate on whether, and it's a little more complicated than I'm saying, but it was basically, can we insult the IB program? And talk of blue-helmeted United Nations people came into the debate. I mean, it was really rollicking. And I got to say that at least in the Senate, it was a tidal wave of our rural legislators who don't seem to have, senators who don't seem to have the same burden of the Eagle Forum that some of our more urban legislators have. And maybe the most passionate defense of IB came from a senator who doesn't even have IB in his district. It was Senator Urquhart, who just gave this eloquent speech, and I think that was kind of the death knell of it. So on the weirdness factor, that if it was 1 to 5, that might be an 11. Although I can't verify this, I heard as soon as we defeated the destruction of IB in Utah, there was a major celebration with champagne at the United Nations headquarters. I can't verify it, but that's the story. So what issues have you been hearing about? What do you want? Oh, Angela, say hi to everybody. Tell them what you're working on.
I'm working on my animal shelter amendment bill, which will be public here.
Is the UN involved at all?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay.
But, you know, there are poor people here that when they get their money from federal government, their monthly cash increment, they go out to buy porn and go gamble. And I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, what about the animal one?
Animal shelter bill, I don't want to talk about it too much yet.
Okay.
But once it becomes public, I'll let everyone know. We're in baby steps right now.
Can we just do it tomorrow? It's not
It's a
practical.
lot of negotiation. But
Can you
isn't
let
that
us-
what the UN teaches you? Is to negotiate?
Can you let us know how to apply for this federal money for porn and
Supposedly, even though we live in Utah, you know, gambling, pay their rent and pay their utility bills, but withdraw that money.
Everybody's saying it's not a problem, but
You know what? I forgot what No, my concern is I was in a committee meeting the other day, and the federal government is if somebody receives EBT cash, there's, the new regulations are that you can't withdraw cash from an ATM that's in a casino, in a liquor store, or in some kind of adult entertainment area. And these are federal regulations. And so in Utah right now, the majority of the people that use that kind of benefit are single moms, and that was pointed out. We don't have that sign of abuse here in Utah. But the conversation went to another area on that, and so I reminded folks on the committee with me that most of these are single moms. They're working hard, trying to take care of their kids, and we can't control how they spend their money, just like we don't want people to control how we spend our money. Because at the end of the day, they're probably paying their utility bill, probably paying their rent, and basic needs of their children.
I don't know, Representative. Every casino in Utah that I've seen has just been besieged by single mothers trying to get the cash out of them. Has Patrice's smoking bill passed, the HB 13 passed, you guys, and it's coming up with us?
Got through the House and it'll come over to you. I think, you know, it was an interesting debate. It was a little like the homeless tax credit debate last year in the sense that it didn't pass by much. It passed by like 41 or 2 to 28, something like that. And some people flipped. Some people who voted against it last year were for it this year. Some people who voted for it last year were against it this year, indicating the volatility of the bill in people's minds. I mean, there are a lot of people on the fence with that bill.
You do that as well, bro. The bill.
Oh, the bill just makes it illegal, a secondary offense to smoke when there is a child in the car. And you know, Representative Aaron has talked at length about what the health hazards are, and so the big objection is that this is nanny-statism and infringing on the private property. I mean, the opponents of the bill had the nerve, I thought, to frame this as, you know, I can do it with my children what I want, and they're my property, and don't have the state telling me what I can do with my property. I thought that was an odd way of phrasing it. But anyway, it'll go over to you guys, and I don't.
Is it going to get out of wherever it gets to get to the floor?
Right, we'll get out of rules. It doesn't need a committee hearing. It got a committee hearing in the House. It does not need another committee hearing in the Senate. But it does have to get out of rules to get on the board. And I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if it'll even get on the, even if it gets on the board.
Doesn't it just move to sifting?
Yeah, but the sifting process, they have to decide, somebody on the rules committee has to decide something. So that's the question. But I really think it'll come up for a vote in the Senate. I don't know, we'll see.
I would really love an update on the non-discrimination bill.
So what's happening with non-discrimination is a long negotiation for the last year and a half with a lot of people. And we had to make some really hard decisions that will become evident, I think, in the next couple of days. And it boils down to, would we rather have a mediocre to bad bill that we can pass, or would we rather stand on principle and have a good bill that doesn't pass, but that gets maybe debated on the floors and out of committee for the first time? So that's really the nub of where we're going with it. And look at it like, what are you talking about?
I'm looking at it like, I can't believe we're having this debate. This is the stupid. I mean, it's like the MLK Jr. holiday debate. Pass the damn bill. I mean, it's gonna pass sooner or later. So let's stop torturing ourselves and everybody associated with this. Pass a clear-cut non-discrimination bill dealing with housing and employment and move on. I mean, we look like a bunch of Neanderthals.
Well, I can tell you that the discussions have been long going and arduous sometimes, and we came close, but we didn't get there this time as far as getting the broad Republican support that we needed. So, I mean, my sense is, but we're still talking to a lot of people in the LGBT community, you know, that it's important this be a community decision. But my sense is better to fight another year than to have a clearly bad bill passed.
I don't want crumbs from the table,
Yeah.
personally.
So we'll.
What is the bad part about it? Can you speak?
What's being offered?
Chamber screening.
Yeah. What's being offered are some bad things in exchange for us signing on to the bill, and you know, we'll continue the discussion. I mean, I don't want to. We're still negotiating, so I don't want to be streaming our positions, but I'd be happy to talk to you individually about where we're going and get your input. So,
Where are we in terms of educational funding?
Governor, oh, Brian, you're better at this. Where are we in terms of educational funding?
I don't know that I am better, but the governor has some proposals that he's pushing that are better than what we've seen from the legislature, but it's still completely inadequate in my mind. I've got a couple of bills that increase substantially funding for public and higher ed. One is increasing severance tax significantly. We're trying to get that. It's been assigned to House Revenue Tax. We're trying to get a hearing on that. Joel Briscoe has a great bill to increase significantly funding for public education in a creative way. And I've got a third bill. We're aware of 3 bills that increase funding for public and higher education. One is Joel's, and one is my severance tax bill, and the other one is my progressive income tax bill, which raises the marginal income tax rate for Utah citizens who make more than $250,000 a year from 5 to 6%, and for those making more than $1 million a year, it raises it from 6 to 7%. The severance tax bill will raise about $75 million a year, all of which goes directly to public and higher ed. The progressive income tax bill will raise an additional $100 million plus a year, all of which goes directly to public and higher ed. Joel's bill, I don't have the fiscal note on that off the top of my head just because it's not my bill, but it will raise tens of millions of dollars, progressively increasing as time goes by, all of which goes directly to public and higher ed. Those are the 3 primary bills that we're aware of. There might be something I'm missing. Yeah, Aaron, Senator Osmond has some great ideas in terms of funding at higher levels, public ed, especially the K through 3 age, and I got to give Senator Osmond credit. Great ideas.
And he's got the money too.
Yeah.
But his plan gets basically a loan from corporations for $10 million. And then the state kicks in some money. And thank goodness Aaron is out there doing this, frankly. But is this how we really want to fund education? I mean, it's a hat out there for corporations. We need to be raising $400 and $500 million. This is hitting it for maybe 20, and we're saying, yeah, victory. You know, the broad vision, in my opinion, is what's missing. We got a governor that simply refuses to say, I'm for funding, for example, the Envision 2020. Oh yeah, I'm for it, but don't pin me down about how to envision it. We have no vision, and until we have a governor that will lead us, we're going to remain. The basic plan is, all right, we definitely need money for education. Let's see how the revenues come in, and then we'll decide. That's not leadership. And even if you take the whole, what the governor's calling new commitment to education, it barely pays for our 14,300 new kids that are coming in. And I don't call it a great victory when our school teachers basically get no more money. And when, after many years of not getting anything, and then you add on to that funding growth when you're 51st in the country. So what? You can't fall to 53rd? I mean, it just plain shows a lack of where the state needs to go. So the big picture is all messed up. And we end up fighting these 5, 10, 20, 40, $50 million. Remember, since the 5% flat tax, we're down $180 million a year over where we would have been had we not done that. And I think Brian's bill speaks to that finally, because that flat tax has been devastating. And it helped, frankly, the people on the highest end.
You ran that bill, like 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
the progressive income tax bill I ran back in 2009 or 2000. 2009.
Is there any hope that,
No.
I mean, there's no hope.
No, there's no hope. No, there's no hope for either of them because the speaker, and I like the speaker very much at a personal level, but I think she's just dead wrong on this point. She said, we will not see any tax increase this session. We will not have a tax increase go through the House. That really helps us, I think, on some issues like the proposal to increase the sales tax on food. I like that, but it's terrible in terms of how we treat higher and public ed. So, I'd like to have the discussion. I'm not deterred by the fact that these bills, I don't think are going to go anywhere in terms of passing. I think that we need to have the discussion with the public and committee hearing and have a public have a chance to weigh in and have papers editorialized, have some discussion within the public sphere about whether we are willing to step up to the plate and increase on some folks, the folks in my mind who are most capable of paying increased taxes, to help our kids in public higher ed. So
I think what little polling has been done out there already says the public schools pay a little bit more. It's just a matter of us having that discussion, really.
Yeah, it's just a matter of political will. What I like to call my colleagues who are no way, no how tax increase people, a bunch of cowards, a bunch of whiners, because that's what they are. I mean, that's what they are.
You're out of order. I got to run a committee hearing at 8.
You and I have the same committee hearing.
Okay, so
Well, I'm not running anyone. I want to sit here and talk, dude.
I don't think they're letting us in after what happened at the last meeting.
Boy, you're right.
Thank you all so much for coming. We can't tell you how much fun we have. So it's every Wednesday through the session, 7 o'clock. Thanks for coming. Angela doesn't want her face on television.